Welcome everyone to the Into the Wild League Week 4. Today we have a great match for you. We have MrDollSteak and Chai. This is the first match of 2 tonight, and I have the privilege and honor of casting with my OG co-caster Jellycat. How you doing tonight, sir?
Hey, Blue. How is it going tonight?
It's going well. I feel good. I feel like we got the band back together, so super
Yeah,
stoked to be casting with you again.
I am so excited for this. Super excited to be casting with you. Super excited to be witnessing this game between MrDollSteak, Chai Tea Latte. This is going to be a super interesting game. So let's get right into it. Do we want to talk about the format for the Into the Wild League?
Let's do it.
Okay, so the Into the Wild League is originally based on the UHL, the United Hearthstone League, that some of you watched. Essentially, this is a best-of-5 conquest format where players bring 3 decks and are required to win with all 3. First player to win 3 out of 5 is the winner. Once you win with a deck, you can't queue up with that deck. You have to win with all 3 to win the match. What's interesting about the Into the Wild League is that it's a rotating weekly format. So week 1, you bring any 3 classes that you want. Week 2, you bring 3 of the remaining 6 classes. Week 3, you bring whatever classes are left. And starting in week 4, we start over again. You can bring any 3 classes. What's really cool about what we're doing here with Into the Wild is that every other week we have deck restrictions. And this week happens to be deck restrictions. Blue, I'm going to get right into it, and then I'm going to ask you what you think. But this week, we've gone with the standard deck construction formats. Year of the Kraken, Year of the Mammoth, Year of the Raven. But just to throw a little wild twist on these things, we've thrown in some wild sets to those as well. So Year of the Kraken, as you all know, is Old Gods, Karazhan, Gadgetzan. Year of the Mammoth is Ungoro, Frozen Throne, and Kobolds. Year of the Raven is Witchwood and Boomsday so far. But to spice it up, really give it that wild addition, we've added Nax, the Naxxramas Adventure, into the Year of the Kraken. We've added Blackrock Mountain into the Year of the Mammoth, and we've added the Grand Tournament and LOE, League of Explorers, into the Year of the Raven. Those are the sets that seem to fit best with those standard formats. So we're going to see, I think, some interesting and thematic decks today.
So
So
yes, So
yeah,
two
what?
things. The first is that the Into the Wild League is not immune to special interests and lobbying, because there was also a request that where and when possible, we wanted to see the inclusion of pinatas into the decks as well. So we might see some special guests in the form of pinatas show up. That may or may not be Slizzle, who has influenced this decision. I make no comments there. And as for the idea itself, apparently this was my idea, although I don't remember making it. I think that maybe I suggested it on a whim when we were desperate to think of a restriction, and I think Nate ran with it. So glad that I've been able
Yeah.
to contribute. I've seen the deck lists, and I'm pretty excited with what we're going to be seeing tonight. So why don't I go ahead and message MrDollSteak and Chai and see if they can get into game 1 so we can see what lists they're going to open with this evening.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get it started. It is important to note that with these deck restrictions, not all these players are whales, and so we've tried where possible to limit the deck restrictions in such a way that players won't be forced to craft additional cards. I think for odd even decks, sometimes for Reno decks, we have made that allowance because we expect most people to have those. But for tonight, I think there's an ask that people put some pinatas in wherever possible. But it is certainly not a requirement because we didn't want to be forcing anybody to craft cards.
So did you dust your pinatas when you opened them from your Boomsday Project packs?
I have to admit, I have only once in my entire Hearthstone career dusted a card that I don't have extras of, and that was a golden splinter graph.
Well, we're going to talk more about that in a second, but it does sound like we are getting into game.
Perfect. Excited to see what we queue up first. Let's talk about these classes here. It looks like MrDollSteak is queued up with Mage, and Chai has queued up with Warlock. So without knowing anything about the deck lists, I think I would guess that Mage is favored here, but we'll have to see how these things turn out. So looking at these mulligans, it looks like MrDollSteak is running a Year of the Kraken Mage list. And, oh, sorry, I am wrong. Looks like Chai is running a Raven Warlock. MrDollSteak is running a Raven Mage. So we have the Raven decks matched up against each other. As you can see, classic and basic cards are always allowed. Otherwise, you'd be pretty limited here. So that Archmage makes it clear that we are looking at a Raven Mage. And what do you think about Arugula? There was a lot of talk about him when he first came out, but we haven't seen a lot of him on the ladder. Oh, pause that question real quick, because this is a juicy Dark Peddler, and we did see the Solarium here. Really interesting choice for what looks to be more of a Reno-style Warlock.
Yeah, not a card that would typically be taken from Dark Peddler. Dark Peddler stopped seeing play in Warlock decks before the Solarium got released, but it is a 1-mana spell, and certainly always a strong choice. And we do see the weaponized Pinata in Chai's hand as well. So respecting the special request made of the players this week. Well done.
Yeah, absolutely. Props there. I wonder if we'll see any players having put weaponized outside of the year. I don't know if it was clear whether you should try to include it in all 3 of your deck lists or just this Raven deck list.
My understanding was it was all 3. It was all 3.
Okay, well, there could be some confusion. So if we don't see Chai with weaponized Pinata in all 3, I think it's important to know that there might have been confusion, and that's acceptable.
Let's be honest here. If we were participating in this tournament, would you have included an optional Pinata in your deck? I wouldn't have. Just saying. I'm being honest here. That's all.
I probably would have answered the "Did you dust it?" question differently and pretended that I didn't have the strictly terrible weaponized Pinata. Speaking of which, though, we do have weaponized Pinata here. Always interesting to see what we get out of that.
So Chai sent a message to me and mentioned that originally she included Gen in her deck, and it's there, and it didn't trigger because the Mountain Giants are not an even costed cards. This was supposed to be an even Warlock deck. So a little bit of a unfortunate circumstance there. But despite that, you know, even with having the hero power at 2 mana, still managing to stay in the game and gonna pull a random legendary off that Pinata. So, you know, random legendaries, I hear, make you win games. This has been advice instilled to me from a pro player, remain unnamed. So we'll see what we get.
Wait, so Chai's not actually running Gen in there anymore, is she?
Maybe I misread the message. I'm trying to multitask here. I'll have a quick look at the list. Stand by.
No, it's totally fine. I think that she may have initially.
Oh no, Gen's in there.
Yeah, we have a Gen in there. Okay, well.
Yeah,
just a
6 mana, 6/5.
Just an unfortunate dead card there. But interestingly, yeah, those Mountain Giants are even. So, have we seen what is causing that that Gen not to trigger? I think she may have included Shadow Bolt in her deck.
Yeah, it's got to be the Shadow Bolt. You are correct.
And unfortunately, that one Shadow Bolt inclusion, it just reminds you when you're building that deck, go ahead and put mana cost : even in that certain. Make sure you don't add anything else.
We see Troxor, the Earthinator, the original OP card from Goblins versus Gnomes. So getting powerful random legendary minions.
I think that that's on the pinata theme here, so we're expecting as many random legendaries. Okay, so King Crush getting a pretty decent random legendary off of that weapon pinata. Let's see if we see that Crush right now. Um, looks like we might be seeing a Solarium here. There it
Yeah, it'll
is.
discount the mountain giants, so maybe thinking get some big boys down for cheap.
Yeah, pretty interesting play there. Able to get one out, able to crush one minion, trade into the other, and losing all three cards off that Solarium, just playing it to get that Mountain Giant out.
Losing the
Chai
dreaded
is
Shadow
going to
Bolt.
be, yeah. Unfortunately, we did see that unfortunate inclusion there. Uh, bummer on that one. We could have had an even on even matchup here. Might have been a different scenario. Although it doesn't seem like that one mana hero power would have made a terrible difference so far.
No, that Garrison Commander is looking a little scary.
Yeah, from Mage here.
Yeah, just being able to put up some damage.
Well, Kaldara Drake is able to put up a little bit more. So
This is true. It's all gonna add up.
able to clear the board with Drake there and drop that Frost Giant for free. So let's see if we see the Nether or the. Yep, we do see. Got to get rid of that Kaldara Drake. You just can't let one mana deal one damage stick around forever. Blue, do you know if two Garrison Commanders are out, are you able to use your hero power thrice a turn?
I don't believe so. I don't believe that affects cumulative. I'll be honest, I've never actually been in a position to confirm this myself, but just reading the
Just
text.
as written, I would not expect it to be cumulative. I would expect if it for it to be cumulative, I would expect it to say you may use your hero power one additional time each turn. We might get to find out though. Although, if DollSteak knows the interaction, I would expect they not play them at the same time. And it does look like, you know, it's pretty tight for Chai to get back here.
Yeah, no life gain, unfortunately. Mage just able to whittle the Warlock down, kind of leaning into the life as a resource theme.
Yeah, we have seen a lot of doubles here, so it is pretty clear this is not a Reno deck. Um, just trying her best to stay alive at this point. And
Yeah, and with that Garrison
pretty
Commander,
obviously,
that's gonna do it. Or Coldera Drake once again.
I think, yeah, all we need is that Garrison Commander. Throws out the unnecessary Kodo Rider just as a little extra, uh, maybe not BM there, but oh, well done on MrDollSteak's part. I love that Brave Archer came into play too. I mean, what are the chances that the 1 mana 2/3 gets an Inspire minion in this Inspire deck?
I suppose the RNG gods were looking for thematic consistency.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so we've got MrDollSteak with the win with the Raven Mage there. So we're gonna see same question I ask every time. We're gonna see if DollSteak we're sorry, we're gonna see if Chai queues up with the same Raven Warlock. And we're gonna see DollSteak with a choice here between Hunter and Warrior. So Chai knows that it's either gonna be a Hunter or a Warrior. I think in either case, Raven is not a bad choice there. So let's see what they queue up.
I agree. The Warlock can pressure the Warrior if it's a slower type Warrior. Although what we know that they don't is that this is a dreaded scumbag pirate warrior. So, while the Warlock has a lot of anti-aggro tools, the burst potential of the Pirate Warrior makes that a bit of a dicey matchup. I think it would line up pretty well with the Hunter. I think that just because right now Warrior is so much more represented by slower decks, maybe the assumption is that it's going to be a more controlling deck. So I'm going to vote that we're going to see the Warlock again from Chai. But I'm always wrong about these things, so we'll get to see if this is one of those rare occasions where a broken clock is right twice a day.
Let's see what happens. And I think we're likely to see the Hunter from MrDollSteak, and I have zero reason for that assumption.
Well,
So
your
let's
track record at guessing is certainly has been better than mine. I'm going to go ahead and signal to the players to start game 2, and we'll
yeah,
get to
let's see
see
how
right
this goes.
away if those predictions are on point. All right.
You do have to factor into this decision though on Chai's side the fact that there is a dead Gen in that deck.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah,
so
that's true.
I do wonder if she's just trying to get it out of the way because she's got to win with that deck anyway, right? It's not like you can hope to win with your other decks and never have to play that one. You have to pull off a win with that deck. So maybe she's just trying to get it out of the way and saying, look, if I win with the suboptimal deck, then all I have to do is win with 2 optimal decks. Not what she ends up doing. And we see Warrior versus Priest, something that neither of us expected. Pretty clear that this Warrior deck is Year of the Kraken, and it looks like the Priest here from Chai is a Mammoth Priest. You can tell from that Lich King that she just got rid of.
Yep,
Also from
that is correct.
that
A
shadow
fun
fishes.
riff on a big priest. So hopefully those anti-aggro tools will allow Chai to stave off just the brute aggression from this pirate warrior.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, we're seeing the Shadow Essence resurrect. We we saw that Lich King. I think obviously we're not going to be seeing a Barnes, but we can see Resurrect, Eternal Servitude. We can see the double Shadow Essence and the double Spellstone. We are going to get Lich King. We are going to get Obsidian Statue. But we do lose the Barnes and the Yasharge. So the two, I think, most hated cards in the deck, but I would argue not the most powerful cards in the deck. So it'll be interesting to see how this performs against what is going to be a pretty optimal, I think, Pirate Warrior. I mean, out of Year of the Kraken, we're gonna get First Mate, we're gonna get the Southsea Deckhand, we're gonna get the Bloodsail Raiders, the upgrade. Obviously, we get patches. We get the Bloodsail Cultist. We get, obviously out of Classic, the Fiery War Axe, the South Sea Captain. We can get the Frothing Berserker. Most of this deck exists in this Year of the Kraken format. So we get Leroy out of the Classic set. We get Loatheb. There's the First Mate I was talking about. So really, we're not missing a whole lot. We're missing some Swashbucklers. Which against Priest, they're not going to give you anything super aggressive anyway. And I think we're seeing that highly optimized Pirate Warrior is just crushing this suboptimal.
Oh gosh.
And unfortunately, Guy is punished for the inclusion of that weaponized pinata. That had been an Obsidian Statue, as it should have been.
Slizzle, if you're watching, I can't approve of this pinata stuff. We gotta recognize it for what it is.
You've got to give Chai the points for playing that card, despite the fact that she's bringing Big Priest. Clearly a suboptimal choice, but hopefully Slizzle is able to catch this VOD and able to appreciate what has just been done on his behalf.
Yeah, sacrifices were made in honor of the weaponized pinata, and Well,
Yeah,
I think that if an Obsidian came out of that Shadow Essence, uh, game was still heavily favored in MrDollSteak's favor. I mean, he got that
I
that incredible curve that Pirate Warrior is known for, but getting
yeah,
that pinata,
absolutely. I mean, there was no reason for me to cast that game. It was pretty clear what was happening there from the get-go. That was almost an optimized Pirate Warrior list. I don't think there was anything that Chai could have done better or differently in that matchup. She was just outclassed, unfortunately, by a ridiculously unfair deck. So just to recap, Chai has a mage left. We know at this point that it is Kraken Mage. MrDollSteak has that Mammoth Hunter left. So probably gonna see a Katrina out of him. Uh, Chai knows that going into this decision. You know, Kraken, obviously, whatever year it is, we can see quite a lot of good classic mage cards. So hard to say what Chai's got in that mage, but um, I I think the Warlock is probably better positioned against a Hunter deck, but I'll always throw out there that I think players like to play with all three of their decks, and so when they're on the ropes like this, I think they often queue up the deck they haven't played, despite the fact that I think Warlock might be the better decision going into this game. So let's let him queue up and see what happens.
yeah, what Chai needs to consider is that every game that we've cast together has gone to game 5. So, and most of the games that I've cast, even without you, have gone to game 5, except for one, I believe. So, I'm going to say it right here. We're going to get to game 5, and that's why I agree that the Warlock's probably a good choice, good matchup. Get rid of that Gen that does nothing. Feels bad, and yeah.
Get it out of the way. I
So
will
I'm
say though, as the players are queuing up, now that you've said that, I just want to apologize to Chai. Your loss is 100% Blue's fault. Uh, when you lose this in 3, it's because Blue jinxed you, and I'm sorry about that. It's not your fault, Chai.
yeah, I'm a terrible person. Sorry, it happens. All right, well, they're getting into the next game. Let's cut over before I do anything else. All right.
Okay, so um, despite missing the little check mark there, Doll did win with Warrior, so we're 2-0 here. Dollstick is looking for a sweep with this Secret Hunter list coming up, and Chai does stick with Big Priest. I think she's probably feeling most comfortable with that deck. Um, decides that the weaponized pinata is not enough to stop her from crushing with that deck. I do happen to know that Chai made the smart decision of only playing a single weaponized pinata and has made the brilliant decision of keeping it on Mulligan so that she cannot possibly Shadow Essence that weaponized pinata. So we are not going to see the terrible, terrible tragedy that
So,
befell us last game.
some inside baseball. Chai and I were chatting before the game started, and I commended her choice of the pinata. And she said, "Hey, I can put in two if you'd like to see that." And I said, one's more than enough. So glad. See, I'm not all terrible. I helped sway the single pinata decision because I am an unabashed pinata skeptic.
Yep, this is true. Okay, so right here, we could see Pinata pull something brilliant that could be hit by a Resurrect and then by a Spellstone. So, a Dragon Caller triggers off Spellstone and only Spellstone.
Yeah, if this goes
Oh,
to late game, it
no,
might be a thing. If
yeah, she was playing Holy Nova. She has the Shadow Essences. She has the Spellstones. We saw her mulligan a Psychic Scream last game, right? So
we did, yep.
that Dragon Caller could hit, and there's the Scream. That Dragon Caller could hit quite a few 5/5s.
I think if Chai is in a position to play Dragon Caller and generate multiple dragons, the game's probably already won by that point, so maybe a little bit win more. I was going to say, you want to get like Ragnaros or Yasharaj off the Pinata, but you could just put those in your deck natively, so, again.
Well, you can't put your shards in your deck.
Oh, that's true. That in this format, you can't.
I don't know what Ragnaros is classic, right?
It is, yeah. Ragnaros is a Hall of Fame classic card.
Yeah, and it was clear that you could play Hall of Fame, so I don't know if we'll see if we should expect Ragnaros in the deck, but definitely could be in there.
So pretty crummy draw there for
one...
DollSteak. Kind of hoping to pull those chargy minions off the Katharina, so kind of a little bit slower. And
the King Crush is okay to draw because it still has native charge. That charge Devilsaur unfortunately has pseudo rush, pre-rush, if you will.
Pre-rush.
What do you think about the Blizzard choice not to errata the charge Devilsaur?
I think it was fine. They didn't want to, break strategies that cheated it out with recruit mechanics. They would have been faced with an uproar.
Understand that.
And, it's tough.
I still think it would probably make things easier if they just gave it rush, but ultimately I think it wouldn't help anything to give it rush. You're not going to be trying to draw.
All right. Here's Blue's prediction of the evening. Once the set rotates, they'll give it rush.
Okay. I'm okay with that. We just saw Resurrect Eternal Servitude on double weaponized Pinata.
Oh my goodness. And there is...
And as I predicted, we are seeing Blue crush Chai's hopes and dreams.
Was it me, or was it the weaponized Pinata? Let's think about that for a second. We had Pinatas every single time there was a loss. So was it me, or should we be blaming Slizzle? Or am I just deflecting the blame to Slizzle?
That's an interesting question. I'd say let's get Chai on the phone. Let's ask real quick if she thinks this is Slizzle's fault or Blue's fault for throwing the jinx out there. Yeah. Ultimately, it could just come down to the fact that I think Chai chose some pretty fair deck lists. An unfortunate issue with that even Warlock, what I would consider a pretty fair Big Priest. And DollSteak decided to bring unfair decks. I mean, that Pirate Warrior was pretty close to optimal. That Mage was not the worst mage you can build with an even mage with Frost Giant there. I think in the end, the player who brought the more unfair decks was the winner, and that's often how things go here in Hearthstone.
And the fewer Pinatas as well. So
that is a good point. I do want to throw out here that the winner was the player who had 0 Pinatas in their lineup. It wasn't optional. We got to give DollSteak the benefit of the doubt that maybe DollSteak doesn't have the Pinatas, didn't have the dust to craft them.
So I'm going to go ahead and start a new call and get MrDollSteak and Chai Tea Latte on with us so we can talk about that set of games. So
brilliant, let's do it.
Bye. All right.
Hey, everyone.
Hey, Jelly. Just waiting for MrDollSteak and Chai. Still see it ringing.
Hey, Blue. And no one else? Okay. Looks like we got Doll and Chai in here. Congratulations, both of you, for a great match.
Great games.
So Chai, I just want to throw this out here. Blue and I have cast a few of these matches so far. Every time we've cast together, we've gone to 5 games.
Well, I feel great. Thank you.
More than once. Wait, more than once. We've gotten a 2-0 start that's gone to 5 games, and going into the 3rd game here, Blue said, and I'm paraphrasing, Jelly, you and I have always gone to 5 games. I have to predict that we're going to go to 5 again. And I said, Blue, I'm going to let Chai know you said that so that she doesn't have to
Aw.
feel bad when she loses 3-0 because you jinxed it.
So
Yeah.
my position is that it's not my fault for hoping for the best. It's Slizzle's fault for making weaponized pinata a thing and having them be included in your deck.
Well,
So
technically, I knew full well that it was a mistake to put them in. And my mage list that I never brought, by the way, was Freeze Mage. So I knew it was a mistake to put Weaponized Pinata in Big Priest and in Freeze Mage. And I kind of just thought, oh, this sounds fun. What's the worst that could happen? And we saw the worst that could happen.
And it turns out the worst that could happen is Shadow Essence into Weaponized Pinata.
Which was a one of. It was a one of.
you were considering playing two, and when you were pondering that possibility, I was thinking to
Oh.
myself, oh dear, I
No,
cannot sanction this at all.
what I was pondering was bringing 6 pinatas instead of 5 pinatas.
Fair point.
Yeah, I can understand that question. I will also say unfortunate accident with the Shadow Bolt in that even Warlock.
Well, the mountain giant really just kind of threw me, and I was too phased. I should have taken more time in my turns. I guess I just played awfully.
Well, we're talking about the Gen interaction where the Shadow Bolts are odd, and so Gen didn't affect
Wait,
your
what
hero
shadow
power.
bolts? I
There was
wasn't
a
running shadow bolts.
yeah, there was a shadow bolt. That's what caused Gen to
Yeah.
not.
So
You
there's 2
sure?
Shadow Bolts in your list, and that's why Gen wasn't.
Oh, well, that must have been a
Triggering.
last minute tweak, and that's entirely my fault. And I can't believe I did that either.
No, it's
It's
totally
embarrassing.
understandable. We've all
No,
done
it's
it, and
embarrassing.
that's
It's
the
not
reason Gen didn't
understandable at
make your
all.
hero power. Yeah, that's why you didn't get the 1-cost hero power there.
I thought it was mountain giant.
Mountain Giant's
No.
12, so you're safe.
No, but did they fix the bug? There used to be a bug with Clockwork and Mountain Giant.
Oh, I don't know. I would
Were
assume they
there
fixed it.
Well,
I
Grizzly and I were talking all game, and he was like, "Oh, I really thought they fixed the Mountain Giant bug," and I was like, "Me too. I would have if it was just brutal." But I
yeah,
never thought to think that I would have put an odd card in even lock. Because
yeah.
yeah, boy,
Certainly in the list that you sent over, there is a Shadow Bolt because we were chatting.
like
We saw
what?
it on
Not
stream
two?
as well. Yeah, we saw it on stream
There's
with
2 Shadow
the.
Bolts.
Oh,
Yeah,
we did when I drew off Solarium. You're right.
yeah, we saw Solarium draw into it.
Oh boy. Well, I'm very embarrassed, and I'm sorry to all the viewers.
No, don't be embarrassed. We said this is just a friendly reminder to everyone watching that there is a way to filter your collection for even cards, so make sure you do that.
Yeah, but it doesn't
It
work with multiple search terms. You can't do filter even and then also something else.
That's
That is the
true.
problem. That is the problem. I think if you filter even at the end, you might be able to, but I
Oh,
cannot
okay.
remember. All I know
Anyway,
is
that's a
yeah,
lot
no,
that
of time talking about that.
it really is. All I know is that we've all made the mistake. Don't feel bad about it. I think Blue and I ultimately decided that the player who won here was the one who brought the more unfair decks, MrDollSteak. Can we talk about how that Pirate Warrior was unnecessary?
so I bring a control from deck, and then I couldn't really quite find the good control cards I needed. Like I could put Nazoth in, but I couldn't really put that many good death rattles. This is the next card that is in a lot of classes. I'm like, wait a minute, uses 28 of those sets. The only ship's cannon. So I was like, oh yeah, Haunted Creeper will do the job.
Oh yeah, Ship's Cannon is the big card you're missing. I was thinking totally the wrong class there. I'm conflating Pirate Warrior and Pirate Rogue. They're odd rogue at this point. Yeah, we knew you were missing
No,
something big.
ship's
but
cannon is the best common in wild.
yeah, I mean, absolutely. If you're discounting, the parrot,
Void Caller, okay.
but other than that, no,
That
Ship's
didn't
Cannon.
work out without King Cannon, but that's fine.
No, but overall,
Priest.
I mean, super key notice that deck was missing almost nothing. Also on the Hunter side, so much of Hunter's great cards come from Classic and Basic. I mean, you've got the Highmane, the uh, Eagle Horn Bow, all the good stuff. Then you've got the Secret Keeper and the Secret Package, and you've got the Unleash and the Deathstalker Rexar from that year, Katrina and King Crush. Just so much of that deck straight out of that format. And then again on the Mage side, so much of Mage's power comes right from that Classic and Basic set. So is that what you started with? Did you start with classes that have a really strong basic package, or were you really looking at strong decks and trying to find ones that fit well?
Well, I was actually thinking about the cards that came out in those Kraken years because, as you said, Classic and Basic have so many good cards. It's a case that really patch up any deck. What I was really thinking about was those good decks that already exist that use a lot of certain expansions, and so that's how I arrived at Pirate Warrior because
Like
I
Big
realized.
Priest.
Right.
Right, like Big
and
Priest.
to the list is very, very similar to the one I was playing during Witchwood. And anyway, Apple Cat's big list with the Witchwood Grizzlies. I actually don't like the Grizzlies, and I just put in Devil Saws, and so I realized those are all, cards from the Mammoth year. The only making that deck was not having Mad Scientist and not having some of the best secrets like Cat Trick, but
Yeah, you do lose some of the
that was
best
part
secrets.
of the deck building challenge, was thinking about use to still have a good go, and so that's why I ended up with the Freeze things, the Wandering, and the Venom Strike, because I think those that were left legally were definitely the best. And yeah, I just loved Katharina. Was hoping to be able to use her, but in the end, still managed to get the big dinos to the face, which is, most of the fun of the deck anyway.
Yeah, and honestly, I think lacking those Witchwood Grizzlies probably helped you in the long run, because in that matchup against Big Priest, those big dinos were probably better for you. They allowed you to put the game away before you started seeing resurrecting obsidian statues or some crazy pulls off of weaponized pinata. So, I mean, speaking of Big Priest, Chai, that's another great example of a deck that is almost complete from that year. So, I mean, all three of your great resurrect spells are there. Shadow Essence is there. You're really just missing Barnes and your
Resurrect is from
Charge, right?
Blackrock Mountain, but yeah, the Spellstone and Servitude are from that year.
Right.
Yeah.
So is that talk to us about how you chose both your classes and your decks. I mean, were you looking for classes that
Sure.
fit well in this format, or were you looking at decks and
Well, I
that
wanted to talk about it. I was definitely looking for classes that would fit well in the format, but the way that I went through it wasn't really about looking at constructed decks and saying, what can I port over? Because I kind of thought, oh, this is really, you're just going to do a bad version of a good deck. So I kind of
Mhm.
looked at it and I said, okay, so here's the sets. Which sets that are available are the most powerful ones? And to my eye, that's Nax for all the really good death rattles you get access to. That's uh, Frozen Throne for the Death Knights in the Mammoth year. And in the Raven year, I think that you're basically looking to draw from either Witchwood and Boomsday or maybe League of Explorers if you built Reno. So I kind of looked around that and I thought, oh, okay, what kind of Reno decks can I build? And that didn't really come together. And while I was doing that, I thought, oh, what if I, instead of Reno Lock, I built Even Lock? And then I had sort of these series of thoughts based around, okay, if only one deck is allowed to play a Death Knight, I have to bring the best Death Knight deck. I have to bring the best Mad Scientist deck. I have to bring the best I guess Shadow Visions deck. And that was my thought process.
So it's almost like you took a bottom-up approach rather than just trying to shoehorn existing archetypes in.
Definitely I did. Yes.
Yeah, so I'm bummed. Speaking of the best Mad Scientist deck, I'm bummed that we didn't get to see that Kraken Mage that you had built, because that was the Mad Scientist deck, and
It was
obviously
Freeze
we
Mage.
know you get.
Classic Freeze Mage without the torches.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you get Doomsayer, you get Frost Nova. Uh, have you played that deck
You
yet?
can throw in Sludge Belcher for anti-aggro just because why not? You need the space.
Sure. Um, and I mean, so much of Mage's power comes right out of
The classic
Classic,
set,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, or even Basic. I
And
mean, you
that's
get
really one of the
Frostbolt, you get
strengths, because
Fireball.
yeah, basic, absolutely. Frostbolt, Fireball, and then you can get Alex and Tony, and that really was kind of where I was. Oh, okay, that's when I settled on Mage. I was like, oh, okay, I can do Freezing Potion, Tony stuff, and then I cut that, and then I can do, there's a simple beauty to just going Alex draws into Ball, Ball, Bolt.
Oh, sure, sure. Um, yeah, I am bummed that we didn't get to see that, but really interesting choices on the other two decks. I think in the long run you weren't hurt by the fact that Gen weren't hurt that much by the fact that Gen didn't trigger. You're able to get a lot of the power out of an even lock anyway. I think. I mean, you
I
were able to
really
get.
strongly disagree. I think that it was like I was playing at like 25% power because my early game really would have been tap, tap, tap for the first 3 turns, and I had to
Okay,
panic and play around that. So I
interesting.
really think that I respect what you're saying, but I think
Hmm.
absolutely that killed me. I died on turn one.
No, that I mean that
I would
is.
agree with that because my deck, I don't know if you noticed in the mulligan, but I actually thought that Chai was playing a Zoo Warlock. I thought she would have been, her Kraken deck would have been Zoo, with Malkazar's Imp, with Haunted Creeper, with Darkshire Councilman, with Possessed Villager. A lot of those really good Zoo cards were from. That's what I mulliganed away
Yeah,
on
and I
my
ended up building around Nether instead.
mulligan.
So the
That's
classic is
Yeah.
right.
going
And
to
so
come
was the
to my
case.
rescue.
The reason why I queued up the mage deck was because I thought I'd have a chance against an aggro deck because of, especially one that uses a lot of tokens because I could have multiple pings of my hero power and able to get a mountain giant out on turn 3 or
Yeah,
something
you would
like
have had
that. I
nothing.
would have just immediately I would have had nothing to do. Yeah. The fact that her game plan was slowed down a lot was what let me seize the game. And even when off of the pinata, if I hadn't top decked the Coldara Drake there, I would have lost anyway. So it just came down to being incredibly lucky playing against a nerfed deck. Effectively, was what it was playing like.
Yeah, I mean it's unfortunate to hear that, but it's also good to hear that I think that some of this loss had to do with the fact that you just weren't playing the deck you wanted to be playing. So let's hope no one else has to face that.
Well,
Because
I
that's
think everyone else might have more time to practice. I kind of threw it together and then I edited it last minute. And you know what I did? I realized why the shadow bolts were in there. I misclicked and I meant to add spellstones.
oh, that's
Oh
completely
yeah.
understandable. Oh, that's so
And I just
disheartening because
didn't
those
play it
spellstones would
practice.
have been incredible too.
Yeah, especially with the 2 mana. Like I had this beautiful synergy. There's the 2 mana card that does 4 to a guy and your hero, and that powers up
Hmm.
Spellstone. It was beautiful because you can't
Oh,
play Homunculus or any of the other good cards that do it. So I was
yeah,
relying on
that's
that
what
a lot to
Spirit
match
Bomb.
them up. Yeah,
And the healing, of course,
yeah,
always would have been much, much needed as well.
yeah.
Oh
Oh,
dear.
Well,
that's yeah,
what you'll
that's a
notice
bummer.
the Warlock deck in the Evenlock deck. I don't think this was on stream, but I was also playing 2 copies of. Oh, I cut them. In my earlier draft of it, I was playing 2 copies of Voodoo Doctor, the 8 mana 8/8 that Death Rattle heals you for 8, and I was kind
Oh,
of
sure.
excited to see those. But then I guess I cut them at the last minute, which
So you
is
mentioned that you
if I
tried
could
to
if I
make.
could advise anyone listening, don't do those last minute tweaks.
Yeah, certainly a great point. We often end up shooting ourselves in the foot with those last minute changes. So you mentioned that you tried to make Reno work. Was it this Reno lock that you tried to make work?
So I tried both Reno Lock and Reno Priest, and Reno Priest I thought was kind of hamstrung by not having Raza, and Reno Lock I felt was hamstrung by not having, like you could choose with the rule set between either having Kazakus or Reno. So I thought Reno Priest would be the one that would work if I could only have one of the two. I'd rather have Kazakus and Reno Priest than or Reno and Warlock, but I decided that I would, funnily enough, go with something more consistent.
Okay, yeah, that's certainly a fair choice.
So when
I
I
really liked the rule set this time, I just like to say, because it really was a good way to think about sets work well together and what decks use sets, etc. Like I think the point that Chai just made is so true was that I was also thinking I saw, okay, League of Explorers is there, the arena deck. You'd see some of these sets is the really big power cards. But then you realize that just having those big power cards in a deck enough if you lose a lot of the other core cards of the deck. So I think made this particular week's challenge a really interesting one. Thinking about the best way set work together, and ultimately why I picked the because I saw Grand Tournament and Witchwood together, so that just made me think of using a hero power related. I ended up picking Mage just because it looks really fun, and the Inspire cards I think
It it
naturally
it
fit
looks
that
so
well.
fun.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
that was a cool deck.
I was preparing on ladder, and I managed to beat 3 separate warlocks who had no idea what hit them. It was very very amusing.
well, so honestly, right when you both queued up Mage and Warlock, one of the first things I said was, without knowing anything about what their decks are, you've got to assume that Mage is favored in this matchup. And it did turn out that way. Your deck made me wonder if that is a real, obviously not exactly that deck because it's a little bit hamstrung, but I do wonder if Inspire Mage could be a real thing.
I think it
Caldara Drake is good.
potential.
Right?
Like I
I
think
mean, Kaldara Drake with a 1 mana hero power?
yeah, and also with the Kodo riders, like an aspirant, the 4 mana 3/5 inspire spell damage guy. Actually, that was one of the cards that was MVP when I was actually playing on ladder. I
Hmm.
managed to beat one warlock
It's
because
really
he
good.
left it up. He didn't respect the card. I ended up giving it spell damage +6 and killing him on turn 6 with the frostbolt and a fireball. It was pretty incredible.
So I have a
So,
little bit of a meta question for you both. This is just to satisfy my own curiosity and get opinions
Yeah,
of
yeah, shoot.
players that are far more talented than I. So when building the decks, you had to think about each year in terms of the sets that it contained. Mammoth, Raven, Kraken, etc. There's been a lot of chatter forever that, there's been a lot of power creep, that newer sets are more poorly designed or less original. So when revisiting these old sets and combining those cards together that you once did but maybe haven't in some time, did you get any sense that people are looking at the past through rose tinted glasses, or do you feel that the newer sets are indeed well designed, and
If
it's
if
just
I can speak to this, I have I think a pretty coherent take. And my
yeah.
take is old Hearthstone, especially I mean if you look at Nax, Nax is probably still one of the strongest sets in Wild. And then if you look at kind of the early Hearthstone, you have this big power disparity, right? Like early Hearthstone, alpha beta Hearthstone was all about like innervate Spectral Knight, and that was the best thing you could possibly do on turn 1. And now we have like Barnes, Yashard, all these other like much more powerful moves. And I think that the ceiling of what you can do in Hearthstone has gone up. I think that the floor hasn't really gone down. It's not like cards are weaker, and it's also not really like the cards that you used to be able to play are now unplayable. It's more that things have shifted from raw power towards being focused on synergy. And the newer cards are more focused on synergy, so they make the decks more often than the older standalone raw power cards.
Do you have a preference as to what style you prefer?
I think that synergy makes for more interesting gameplay from a game design perspective. And so I think that the design move to switch towards kind of stylized oh, when I explain the difference between Magic the Gathering and Hearthstone, I say that Magic is about two players having plans and one of them stops the other one. But I think Hearthstone's design philosophy, especially lately, is more about two players have a plan and then they both do the plan and then whoever's is bigger gets to like hit their opponent with it. And that's kind of fun too because you don't have the like feel bad of not getting to do your big thing if you build a deck around it. So from a design perspective, I think that's cool.
So if I were to surmise, you
I
think
actually
that the
don't like
game
it.
is sorry, DellSteak. I want to hear your
Oh,
thoughts on
please.
this as well. But I just want to just understand. So it sounds to me then that you like the direction that the game's going in and feel that the newer cards are introducing positive game mechanics and
I
interactions.
think that most of the newer cards have been good for the game. I think that sometimes, especially when they push things for standard and when they push things for kind of constructed playability, there is a lack of real playtesting. And there's also a lack of consideration given to wild. You see this in Star Aligner. It's one of the boogeyman of the format, but it's, I think, the third least played card in all of standard.
Mm.
Yeah, I
So,
mean,
things are more
Psych
powerful
Melon
with
itself
context,
is
and that's synergy. Psych Melon, yeah, absolutely. Obscene.
like just no one plays Psych Melon in standard. It's not good, and it
And in
totally
Wild,
changed
it
our format.
deserves a nerf, possibly.
Well,
I mean, if no one's playing it in standard, the nerf won't affect standard at all, right? So just do it.
Yeah.
so Mr.
But
Doll,
Oh no, you don't understand. Next set they're gonna print all these busted 7, 8, 9, and 10 drops for Druid because it's suffering so much.
I don't remember where I read this. It might have been a comment on Reddit, but someone theorized that Juicy Psych Melon was like intended to be the replacement for Ultimate Infestation, kind of like how Psychic Scream was the replacement for Dragonfire from a standard mindset. I don't know if that's true necessarily, but it seems like,
That seems possible.
I think
unfortunately, then it kind of
that's
backs
one of
up.
the problems.
Yeah, sorry, go on, Mr. Allstick. Sorry.
Oh no, sorry, I didn't interrupt. But no, I definitely agree with that. Just because a core classic set, I think this is a problem that we're seeing become more and more pronounced as the years go on. Is that
I agree.
Blizzard, because they don't want to reprint cards, which I agree with. I don't think they should reprint cards. However, because certain classes are missing or cannot do certain things with their classic set, reprinted in new sets that are slightly different. It has for Wild is it ultimately means that cards end up having a lot of slightly different versions that do the same thing,
Yeah.
multiply and stack up on effects. That was one of the things that made so scary in the Knights of the Frozen Throne and the Kobolds and Catacombs was they now had 3 really strong board clears, Light Bomb,
Yeah.
Dragonfire, Psychic Scream.
Yeah.
That meant that even though they were a Reno deck, consistently able to draw into late game board clears. So that's one of the problems, and I think this is only going to get worse with time.
I agree,
I
especially with
think
pre
we
scaling.
do need to change the classic set, and just for the long term health of Wild, standard is always going to be fine, but this is ultimately what's destroying Wild. I think in many senses is that we are getting multiple incredibly strong power creep cards that are designed to replace power creep cards being constantly
They're the
introduced.
marquee cards of
So
their own
that's why
standard format.
yeah, I mean, you look at even other Reno decks are doing the same thing. You look at Reno Lock when it first dropped, you were seeing people playing Sludge Belcher and Rotten Apple Bomb, and obviously they're starting to change it now. But that kind of thing is going to keep happening as they continue to have to print these types of cards in standard.
And
Yeah.
would you say that
Or if you want
giggling
to
and
talk about Reno Lock, oh, sorry.
no,
I was going
no,
to say, if you want to
go
talk
on.
about Reno Lock, like going from running Corrupting Mist to eventually they're going to print another great board clear. We have Godfrey now. They're going to do another one that's like Nether quality. And then you can just keep cutting the like
once
30th of the
Defile
29th
rotates
card from
out,
these Reno decks. So
Yeah.
they're only
Yeah,
going to get better.
absolutely. And I think I've heard a lot of talk of the potential for a rotating classic set, and I think that's probably the way to fix this.
Hmm.
Well,
because that way you can just bring in certain cards from, use a majority of the classic set. But say, for example, this year they knew they were going to be releasing Boomstack, a lot of
Yep.
mechs. They could
Perfect
have done
time
it
to
in their classic set, included some more of the old school mechs that they would naturally synergize with some of the new cards they were going to release. Tournament, for
yeah.
example, they could remove some of the filler and replace it with Grand Tournament pack filler, which is suddenly a lot more interesting when revolving around hero power.
So I'm
Yeah,
a
and
little bit cynical that that's going to happen. So when you look at the Magic the Gathering model of cycling in older cards back into the standard rotation, when we think about Hearthstone, people always cry at how expensive it is, but for those who've even dabbled in Magic the Gathering, you'll know that
Oh,
Hearthstone's a
there's no
fraction of the
comparison.
price.
None whatsoever.
So if you start rotating old cards back in, that would probably impact the revenue model that they've built up for the game, and
Yeah.
it would probably inflate the price a little bit to maintain that parity. I think it's a good idea, but
Mm.
I agree. I mean, how many different
Yeah, you're
variations can
right.
you have a board clear
Just
for?
because
I'll
it's
also I'll also
good
say
idea
that
balance
Magic
wise.
reprints cards because they physically need to make more of that card.
yeah,
Like
that's a
the
huge
secondary
thing.
market is a major concern.
Yeah.
Hearthstone, everything's dust.
Yeah, I mean, often I know Magic has put cards in the core set specifically because they're really viable in eternal formats, and they want an easy way to reprint that card. Where
Yeah,
Hearthstone
a
doesn't ever
good
have to do
example of
that.
this would be Inquisition of Kozilek is a 1 mana discard spell that for a while there was like $40 and it's an uncommon. And then they reprinted it and now it's like a $10 card or like a $7 card. And it was just $40 because they printed it 15 years ago.
I might be outing my age here, but wasn't Force of Will a common, or is that an uncommon?
Force of Will is an uncommon and it's from Alliances.
Yeah,
Force
okay. That was like the
Force of Will.
first.
And I have 8 of them.
Oh dear,
Why do I
maybe
have
you've just
8?
outed your
It's
age as well, or maybe you're just a voracious collector.
no comment. No
Okay,
comment.
fair enough. I think that was the first $1 million uncommon introduced, but I agree. I think that just like they had to introduce the standard theme into Hearthstone to kind of maintain some parity, they're probably going to need to change up their model at a certain point. They are kind of veering into the realm of unsustainability. I have no doubt they'll figure
It's
something
not
out.
Yu-Gi-Oh! It's getting Yu-Gi-Oh! Ish.
Oh gosh, I have not. Let's not say things we can't take back
Okay, okay.
now. I'm kidding. Um,
I do certainly agree with that because if you look at what really people are complaining about at the moment in terms of Hearthstone, it's all the new combo decks. They're not complaining about new aggro decks. They're not complaining about new control decks. They're complaining about new combo decks, and that's certainly what seems to be happening in terms of the kind of busted cards that are coming out of the busted strategies. It's uninteractable combos. People remember Naga
Yeah.
Giant. People still talk about Big Priest. People obviously used to talk about Reno Priest. That was a combo deck.
And I think a lot of that has to do with the fundamental
But we don't
nature of
hear
Hearthstone, that it's a
It
game where
it
interaction
does.
is harder.
I also think part of it, and this is my own personal bias as like a heavy combo player. I think I've played combo in a lot of different card games in Magic, in Netrunner, which is a phenomenal card game, probably the best I've ever played, and in Hearthstone. And I would say
Unfortunately
that
canceled.
Hearthstone players are are like by far the biggest babies about combo decks. Like there's an understanding in other games, especially in Magic, that if you're playing against a combo deck and they combo out, oops, you were too slow. But in Hearthstone, the understanding is I was about to win and then they took it away from me. The people don't understand that they weren't about to win. And I think that makes people more upset about combo decks than they might be if they played against them all the time.
Yeah, I definitely think that other games, Netrunner, Magic are great examples, have an understanding of a meta and what makes a healthy meta. And I think if you look at a game like Magic, I think a lot of high-level players will agree that the combo decks are important to building a healthy metagame. And you can't have that
And
kind of rock, paper, scissors format without them.
yeah, but you do need the broad open-ended answers. You need force of will for any spell. You need wasteland for any land. You need Thoughtseize for any card in hand. Like without this, it's hard for the format to self-police. But the self-policing format is not really like that level of interactivity isn't really Blizzard's designed for the game, and that's fine because it takes away the ability to just play a game on your lunch break or whatever. But at the same time, I think that we've seen Wild sort of able to self police and regulate itself around this threat to the meta, but if there were more tools, we'd be better able to do it.
So do you think that maybe, and this will probably never happen, but I'm gonna muse on it anyways. Do you think that the release of wild exclusive cards to help balance that meta might be an answer?
I think it might be, but you could also do it by just keeping up like a slow drip feed of interactive cards through standard, such to the point that you never get like a standard deck that's all about shutting down what the opponent does, but that you eventually have a critical mass in wild. If you just keep printing like dirty rat type cards every year and a half, every 2 years, eventually wild will be able to self-police. The question is if we'll still be there.
Well,
Yeah, I certainly don't mind a format where a deck like Star Aligner is able to crush decks that aren't prepared for it, but it's relatively easy to prepare for it, and then the meta forms around that. I think that's what a game like
Yeah,
Magic has done.
especially in the more eternal formats like Legacy.
Yeah, absolutely. Legacy has a large number of decks that if you don't come prepared for combo, you're just going to lose. But
Yeah.
they're relatively straightforward to prepare for.
Oh, I could talk about
Even
this all day,
we,
but I won't.
I think that the important thing to realize to talk about, I guess, is that it's a lot harder in Hearthstone without that instant speed interactivity with just the nature of the game. I think that it's harder to create super interactive cards like that.
It is, definitely it is. But it's not impossible, and I've designed probably 15, 20 different spins on it over time. If you look on my Twitter, there's a bunch of custom cards there. It's
So
possible.
speaking of your Twitter, I'm gonna ask you both to shout out where people can get in touch with you. Chai especially would like to make sure that Blizzard knows how to get in touch with you so that they can look up all these great ideas.
Oh, fantastic. Okay. So you can find me on Twitter at chai underscore THS, CHAI underscore TEAHS. Or you can read every month the Vicious Syndicate Wild Report, which I'm an editor and writer on.
Brilliant. And MrDollSteak, where can we catch you?
a similar sort of thing. I'm on Mission Syndicate as well, so I normally write the Hunter section. This month, also help contribute to Rogue. Twitter, I'm just MrDollSteak. I've been posting up some of my lists, and I'll definitely be posting up the lists that I used today. Of course, not necessarily ones you're going to run into on the ladder as such, but just to give you a bit of an idea about how I went about building these decks for the format, what changes that I made, and maybe even to come up with some suggestions about how to make even mage ladder viable.
I mean, my first selection is to test Nexus Champion, but I'm definitely excited to try to make that deck work.
Even sadly,
Isn't Nexus Champion odd?
He is odd. You'd have to stop. You'd have to take away the Gen. Um, but I
that's a
want to put
shame.
Nexus Champion
I
in
feel like
every
a
single
fire
Inspire deck.
mage again might be a bit tricky. The main cards that I really wanted to put in that were from other sets were some of the Dragon Synergy cards. I thought it could be potentially really
Mm.
You could
um,
discover Koldara
like
Drake
that,
with
Yeah,
an added opus
absolutely.
bonus. Yeah.
just to maximize that. There's another specific card I was thinking about. I think it might have been a board clear.
And Chai's
It's kind
idea
of
as well. There's no reason not to put Alex Straza in at that point, right?
Well, Alex has always gone in Freeze Mage. Tony was really the unusual inclusion.
Yeah, but certainly not a bad choice there. Well, I don't want to keep anyone any longer. I know it's getting pretty late, and I think Blue, there may be another match tonight, right?
Yeah, so this is Doubleheader Friday at 10 p.m. Pacific, 1 a.m. Eastern. There's going to be a match between Mike Lowe, the United Hearthstone League Commissioner, and Dr. Evil. I'll be casting that with Ken Sanity. So that's going to start in about 2 hours and
That
20
sounds
minutes.
awesome. I'll be there.
Oh, fantastic.
fantastic. I'll be
That's great.
checking
I
it
was
out.
worried that it would be a bit late for our East Coast friends, but we're all a bunch of night owls anyways, so so be it. And I just want to thank you guys for being good sports and hanging out with us for so long. The writing that you guys do for Vicious Syndicate is awesome. I always look forward to it every month, and just having the
Thanks,
opportunity
man.
to get your thoughts on the game, your deck building in general has been certainly enlightening to me, and I hope for those who stuck around as well. So really appreciate that.
Oh, no problem. Thank you. Thank you for putting it on. Thank you for your great casting.
Yeah, and thanks for casting.
Oh, it's
Yeah,
a privilege.
absolutely. It is our privilege. Thanks so much for letting us join you for a couple hours here, and have a great rest of the evening.
Absolutely. You guys too.
Take care, everyone. We'll see you at 10 Pacific. Take care.
Bye-bye.